Oh, what up? CGB here, coming to you with a different video. I'm back. I'm off my plane from Thailand. I'm jet lagged AF, and see, trying to decide, can I play any duels today? I don't know if I can. Like, my eyes are bloodshot. It's no good. But what I can definitely do is make this video. So we're at the deadline. By tomorrow, deck lists have to be in for Steam Showdown and Fight Club Round 4. See there, Steam Showdown, Fight Club Round 4. And so it's the last hour, it's the final hour for getting your decks. And some of you may be undecided, some of you may just want to see what's going on. And here's what's up with me. I've got my deck, I've picked it. I'm not going to show you that today, because everybody will meta beat me. Ha! But that'll be a surprise for tomorrow after deck lists are announced. I'll do a video about my deck. But today I'm going to show you everything else, all the other decks I tested, all the other things that I played and tuned, things I considered, and things that got discarded along the way. Why would you want my sloppy seconds? Well, maybe there's a version of a deck that you want to play and you might really like the list. Also, several of these I would have played. The deck I've chosen is, like usual, a metagame call, something that I think can beat what I expect most of the field to be. So that's what I'm going with, but you may not agree with that, and you may think one of these are the way to go. So maybe you'll enjoy this, and maybe it'll give you a glimpse into my testing too. Speaking of my testing, this season my testing was not done online. I'd usually like to play some games against some other members of the community and figure out if my decks are good. Didn't have the chance to do that. Was overseas most of the time, as you know, if you watch the channel. And because of that, my testing is very, what you could call inbred. It's a lot of me playing the AI and me playing myself on cockatrice. So there's definitely holes, there's room for holes in the meta, right? I ran lists designed by other people, but playing against yourself does leave you vulnerable to other lines of play that people may take, other cards that people may play that you don't prepare for. But anyway, let's get into it. So what did I think was going to be most popular? My biggest fear was this deck right here. Well, fear isn't the right word. The thing that I think will get played the most is right here. Boros, Vroom Vroom, good old Boros vehicles. And let's go through the list that I settled on. I think this is a really good simplified list of Boros vehicles. Very straightforward, just very to the point. So I'm running Bomat Courier, two Toolcrafts, 3 Inventor's Apprentice, and 4 Shocks, so plenty of 1-drops. A Heart of Kirin, 2 Smuggler's Copters, 2 Scrap Heap Scroungers. Let's just scroll these a bit. 2 Selfless Spirit, 2 Abbots, 3 Veteran Motorist. Okay, Abbot, I don't see many people play this in their vehicle decks, and I don't see it in a lot of lists. And obviously, it's hard to get everything you want into these decks, but I don't know how people ignore this card when you have Veteran Motorist. It's so awesome in my world. I don't know, maybe I just get too much excitement over value, but when I Veteran Motorist and put a land 2 from the top, and so the next turn I draw the non-land, then I play the Abbot and play the land off it, and then play the other spell. It's just so awesome. Also, if you have 4 mana, you can do that in your main phase. Play Veteran Motorist, put a land on top, Abbot, play the land. I mean, come on, that's cool. 3 Harnessed Lightning as the next removal spell. You saw we ran the 4 Shocks. Now we have the 3 Harness because we have an energy sub-theme thanks to Aether Sphere. Harvester, 2 Pia Nalar, 2 Thalia. Let's get these over a bit. 2 Depla, Depala, I don't know. 2 Fleet Wheel Cruisers, and a Gideon as the top of the curve. So this cut of the deck is very aggressive. Mana Vase is, as rock solid as 2 colors gets. 8 plains, 8 mountains, 2 spires, 2 cliff tops, 3 hubs. So we don't want to use the hub too much for mana. We really just want the energy to pay off the Harness Lightning, because this is our biggest removal spell, and the deck's probably biggest softness is against cards with high toughness and lifelink that it struggles to remove, like Aether Sphere Harvester, and like Kalitas, Trader of Get. So you need your Harness Lightnings for that, and to do that you need more energy. To get more energy you have your own Harvesters, and you have the hubs, which you don't want to be using for mana if you can help it. The only reason we'd need mana colors outside of this is to bring back a Scrappy Scrounger. Comes up sometimes. But this list is low to the ground, it's to the point, and it's pretty tough to frickin' beat. So this is the kind of deck I expected to play against the most. Probably not this version. Most other versions have like a Cultivator's Caravans, Pia Kirin Nalar, Archangel Avacyn, and a Skyship. We'll get to that later, but if I were going to register the Vroom Vroom deck, which I strongly considered, this is what I would register. And we can go down here, you can check out stats. By the way, there'll be links to all this stuff here on Magic Duels Helper in the description, so you can check that out if you want to. But you see just a super consistent, low-to-the-ground curve. 23 land, I believe, is where we're settled. Yep. And the 7 artifacts, but Pia Nalar also makes artifacts, so 9-ish artifacts. And that's how we rock and roll. That's the Vroom Vroom. So that's a deck you may consider. It's probably, I almost played, like, that deck was so good right out of the box, I almost played it. So it's definitely something you can run if you're into Vroom Vroom and you like the list. But let's go against other things. So what beats Vroom Vroom, or how do we compete with it? Well, one thing about vehicles is you have to crew them. And if you have to crew them, you have to tap your creatures. And if you have to tap your creatures, then you're tapping out to cast creatures, and those creatures are coming into play basically tapped because you had to crew your vehicle to attack with it. Meaning, you're open to getting smacked in the face. Hence, Mad Red. So, if you want a red aggro deck, this is the one I dig. This is just all about getting them dead and getting them dead quick. 2 Bomats, 3 Goblin Glory Chaser, 4 Insolent Neonate, 4 Titan Strength, 4 Shock. 2 Smuggler's Copter, 2 Abbots, 2 Kari Zevs, 3 Bloodseekers, and 3 Fury Blade Vampires. You're going to see, we take our madness seriously. 4 Senseless Rage, 4 Distemper of the Blood, 2 Exquisite Firecraft, 2 Kari Zev Expertise. So, yeah, this deck just jumps up, punches you in the face as hard as it can on turn 3, and finishes you off a little bit on turn 4. End of frickin' story. 18 mountains, 1 Looming Spires. You don't want too many tap lands. This is just sometimes that one little extra budge that you need. Yeah, nothing fancy going on here. Almost played this deck because it usually kills on turn 4. Gemini gave me a shell of this deck right before Aether Revolt dropped, and it worked without Aether Revolt. Now with Aether Revolt, the main thing that we have is Kari Zev and her expertise, which makes the deck smack you in the face even more. Pretty common play patterns. Kari Zev, steal your vehicle, like your Smuggler's Copter, your Harvester, your Caravan, your whatever, and play a Ravenous Bloodseeker or Fury Blade Vampire to crew it. So that comes up quite a bit. And this deck will just, it gets turn 4 kills very consistently if you don't face serious opposition. Now the opposition, of course, is Fatal Push, which probably the killing blow to the deck as it fatally pushed it out of consideration, but that doesn't mean you don't still win plenty of games. The creature count's a lot higher than the original version I was given, so 1 Fatal Push doesn't end your run, and it does just have this way of blowing you out of nowhere if you're not prepared for a Bloodseeker or Fury Blade going off along with Expertise and Madness cards. So, not a lot to say about that deck. I love that for a low of 2189, you can play this at F&M. Although, of course, you can't. You have to take out Abbott. I'm just going to drop that subject. It's a whole other subject. But the curve, sick as can be. 17 1s, 22s, only 4 3s, which lets us get away with 19 land. Pretty good stuff. I mean, just get them dead. There's not much else to say. So that's Mad Red. Let's go hit the deck box again. And so that's one way to kill them. The other way to kill those vehicles is just to kind of play better hits up the curve. I think that the snake decks are going for that. This is where I ended with a green-black snake deck, and we'll get through it fast. And it's not bad, but the mana's worse than expected. You actually need like double and sometimes triple green when you want to play your Rampager the turn you draw it. You also need, though, double black for Grasp of Darkness and several other cards, and we'll hit the list really quick. 2 Ballistas, 2 Rampagers, 3 Pushes, 1 Heart, 2 Copter, 2 Scrounger, 2 Glint Sleeve, 3 Tusk, 3 Constrictor, 3 Grasp, 2 Harvesters, 2 Yahennis, 2 Tireless Trackers, 1 Nissa, 2 Woodland Wanderer, 2 Bristling Hydra, 1 Kalitas, 1 Verse Gearhulk. Then we've got the mana base. 9 Swamp, 9 Forest, 2 Quags, 2 Cemeteries, 2 Orchards. Okay. So this deck has a lot of tension in the mana base. You need double black and you need double green, and sometimes you need triple and quad black, and sometimes you need triple green to do what you want to on your turn. The curve is really low, which is nice, but you have trouble casting 2 or 3 spells a turn because of the mana. But at the same time, you can't have all your lands come into play tapped. You have to curve out. Otherwise, this deck is so freaking weak if it doesn't curve out. So, oddly, in a 2-color deck, you've got mana issues, which is really bizarre. This is also a vehicle deck. It is very much a vehicle deck, and that'll be one of our themes. What is the best vehicle deck? This one, Harvester, Smugglers, Heart of Kirin, they're really there to enhance the power of the creatures rather than the creatures being there to enhance the vehicles. Greenbelt can play Crew Bounce if you don't have the energy to keep it on the battlefield. Greenbelt can also combo with cards like Siphoner and Longtusk Cub to make sure you have plenty of activations. And then you have Winding Constrictor. And if you have this card on the battlefield, you can do nutty things, like Greenbelt, gain 2 energy, pump 2 energy into a Cub for +2/+2, then return, and Greenbelt goes back to your hand. So then for 1 green mana, you're getting +2/+2, or 2 energy whenever you want it if you have a snake on the battlefield. Some other good combos, Yahenni when you can, it's pretty common to like play a Yahenni, maybe the opponent doesn't care. Then next turn you play a Constrictor and a Fatal Push, get 2 +1/+1 counters on your Yahenni. That's pretty sick stuff. Woodland Wanderer is really weak in the deck, unless, of course, you have the Constrictor out. Otherwise, it's a 4-mana 4/4 trample. Not that exciting. Maybe doesn't make the cut except for the chance that you could Aether Hub it. But as you see, I don't even have Aether Hubs because the mana requirements get so sticky. So maybe it needs 2 Aether Hubs back in. They just screwed me over a bunch of times with the mana requirements in the deck. I was always making mana with my hub, and I need the energy for other things. Really quick note, Kalitas is a great combo with most of the deck, but is a non-bo with Yahenni. If Kalitas is out there, you don't get +1/+1 counters when creatures die with Yahenni, but you get zombies. So it's kind of the same thing. It's very similar. Scrap Heap Scrounger doesn't synergize with the rest of the deck, but you just need a regular crew hand for your vehicles so that if the opponent wipes your board, kills all your stuff, you can bring it back and then smack them with your vehicles. So that's what's up. Like I said, this deck, I had high hopes, and it just ended up, good. I would say good, not great. The curve is funky, it's really low, which looks really good, but it's really hard to cast 2 spells in a turn when you get to turn 4 and 5, because the mana requirements are intense. So, just keep that in mind. I also had a version of this deck with Gifted Aetherborn that was really good when it worked, really bad when the mana requirements got in the way. Let's move on, because I built another version of that deck, Green-Black Snakes, that I think is even better. I really do. And it's funny because it's 3 colors. It's a Jund version. And the 3-color version you would think would be harder to cast, but because we got to get rid of Grasp of Darkness and cards like Gifted Aetherborn, it's actually easier to cast most of the spells. So what are we doing in red? Well, you'll recognize most of this stuff. Ballista, Fatal Push, only 2 in this one. 1 Heart, 2 Copter, 2 Glint Sleeve, 3 Cub, 3 Constrictor. So far we're the same deck, but then we had 3 Voltaic Brawler, 3 Harness Lightning. That doubles us down on our energy quite a bit. Then we go with the 2 Harvesters, 2 Yahennis, 2 Trackers. We get 3 Unlicensed Disintegration. This is just the best removal spell. I mean, when it's working, when you have an artifact and you get to play this, it's just the bomb. It stops Aether Sphere Harvester, which is huge for any deck that wants to attack. 1 Nissa, 2 Cruisers, so we get to play Fleet Wheel. 2 Woodland Wanderers are much better in a deck that can produce multiple colors of mana. 1 Skyship, 1 Gearhulk. So we drop cards like Kalitas that are double black and make things harder to cast. The only thing that we need double color of in this whole mana base is we need double green. and that's for only a few cards, Nissa, Voices Zendikar, and Gearhulk. And then we're running 2 swamps, 2 marshes, 2 mountains, 2 glades, 2 forests, 1 quags, because we can't have too many ETB tapped. We want to curve out really bad. 2 cemetery, 2 root bounds, 2 skulls, and 3 hubs. Here we use our, and 3 evolving wilds. Here we use our hub for mana quite a bit, but that's okay, because we have a lot more ways to generate energy. Voltaic Brawler we don't even use its bonus for the +1/+1 too often. What we do most of the time is generate some energy and keep hub running the way that hub needs to run. And then we have awesome Harness Lightnings and awesome Harvesters. We have some awesome removal in general, 2 Fatal Pushes, 3 Harness Lightning, 3 Unlicensed Disintegration. Really good stuff. Also Sky Council. So this deck, I think, is just a better take on green-black, and when I'm done, I'm going to just delete that green-black deck, because every time I played this deck, it just felt like the better Winding Constrictor vehicle deck. Again, the vehicles are here to enhance your creatures. Your creatures are not really here to enhance your vehicles. The creatures enhance each other and your removal, like Harness Lightning with Winding Constrictor. So it's just kind of an important difference to keep in mind from decks that enhance their vehicles with cards like Veteran Motorist. The vehicles are here to make your creatures have pseudo-haste and kill planeswalkers, as opposed to, get big and killing opponents necessarily. So this deck, I think, this one I considered quite a bit. I really like it. It's a little more, it goes a little bigger than the vehicle decks and has good game against them while still being hard to stop. Anything running less than Pure Control has a really hard time with it. It doesn't have much trouble bashing through planeswalkers and getting opponents dead if they don't have immediate sweepers and answers to the board state. And even the sweepers, their effectiveness is mitigated by the vehicles. So this one almost made the cut. Almost got there. As you see, we've once again got a pretty intense curve, and remember, some of our zeros are Walking Ballista, which you could curve in at 2 or 4 typically, making the curve even smoother. And yeah, like this deck, if you curve out like 2, 3, 4, and definitely if you have one of the 5s, which there aren't enough good ones in the set, but if you have one of those 5s, you just go smash on the opponent quite a bit. One card that didn't make the cut was Nissa Vital Force. That may still need to make the cut because, like I said, good 5s, and when this deck curves into good 5s, it's very strong. So maybe you can cut like 1 Voltaic Brawler. Maybe you can even cut 1 more Fatal Push to run that. Just throwing it out there. It doesn't go well with our vehicles, though. That's the one thing about Vital Force. All right. Going back to the box, still rolling along. I have plenty of fun things to show off that I was excited about. Let's get into Control. So in a world where the vehicles are coming out and they're reliant on having things to crew copters, just killing everything is good. And then when the mid-range decks are doing their thing, countering things are good so that you can counter planeswalkers. The right mix and you have a good control deck, which that's kind of, I think, level 3. Level 1 is vehicles, level 2 is mid-rangey stuff that beats vehicles, planeswalkerish decks, and level 3 would be pure control. And this is what I considered for my pure control. So this is Izzet. I made a video of a very similar deck, so I won't spend too much time as it's a bit of a rehash, but let's just get into it. 4 bombardments, 2 Thing in the Ice. Cards I'm not playing here, Jace and Baral. Both of those were pretty darn weak to Fatal Push. Thing in the Ice is 2, but it's not weak to, say, Harness Lightning, and it's not weak to Shock. So it's specifically Fatal Push that we don't like with Thing in the Ice. And maybe we can mess up their Fatal Push at the time they cast it. Maybe an Unsubstantiate is good enough. So I'm keeping the Things, as they were the highest performing 2-drop. But Barals and Jace got pushed out of the format. 4 Bombardments, 2 Things, 3 Telling Time, 3 Unsubstantiate, 3 Harness Lightning. Oh, wait, never mind. There's Jason Baral. Foot in mouth. I thought I took them out for Take Inventory. Maybe this... But, nah, there they are. Let's forget what I said. Anyway, they're on the chopping block for sure. They're great when they stick. When they get pushed, it's very sad. And you could run Take Inventory in the spot, which is the big kind of conflict I've had with the deck, is whether or not to run more removal or card draw instead of these spells. And then we get into the good stuff. Dynavolt Tower, 2 Scatter to the Wind, 2 Radiant Flames, 2 Exquisite Firecraft, 3 Glimmers, a Brutal, a Chandra, a Disciple of the Ring, a Confirm, a Jace, a Gear Hulk, and a Chandra. So 8 islands, 8 mountain, 2 fume rolls, 2 sulfur falls, 2 highland lakes, 2 hubs. Good deck. Problems with the deck. Basically, the small cards dying to removal is really bad, but there isn't a lot of great stuff to sub in. You can sub in card draw, but then you're just weaker. What else could you do? You could play Shock. I don't really love that. I feel like I end up too reactive when I play Shock. Like, the packages I tried instead were take inventory, then you're just drawing cards too often and not killing the board, which will kill you very quickly in this format. So if we cut Jace and Brawl and Thing and put in, say, a combination of Shock and a few more counters, maybe that's good, but it still leaves us holes in the 2 spot. It's rough. It's kind of just, the early turns don't feel very smooth, and they didn't feel very straightforward in how to play them running this deck. So that's the biggest problem. Now, the good news is you have Glimmer, and Glimmer is basically the awesome card if you're a control deck in the format. Card's so good. Makes things happen. You only get 1 Gear Hulk, which is very sad. So you need other ways to take advantage of all the Glimmer card advantage. I don't know if this deck quite has it. Dynavolt Tower is good, but not great. So you need even more ways to pay off that card advantage. Disciple of the Ring's good, not great. So that's just where I ended up. It's a very solid deck, but I don't think it had all the answers I'm looking for. You may, though, really like Izzet decks and want to play something like this. Also, if you like tutelage, maybe all you need to do is cut these 3 cards and add tutelage, and you've got pretty darn close to a deck. You might need to make a few other adjustments, but it's really close. So think about that if you're a tutelage folk. All right. Curve, nice and smooth. A lot going on 2, but like I said, maybe not what I want to be going on 2. What I want to be going on 2 is get them dead or get them countered. And our options in blue and red aren't nearly as good as the next color we're going to try. So this is the, coming up here is the control deck I almost played, which is Dimir Control. And this is the one I came really close to registering. So let's do it. 3 Fatal Push, 3 Aether Meltdowns, 3 Horribly Awry, 3 Telling Time, 3 Grasp of Darkness. You see how we're spending turns 1 and 2 in this game is much more of get it dead or get it countered. Alright? Then we have our Dynavolt Towers, Scatter to the Winds, Broken Concentration, 3 of those, 3 Murders, a Liliana the Last Hope. So turn 3 is more get him dead, get him countered, or stick a card that's going to accrue advantage throughout the game. Then we get into the next set. We have 3 Glimmers, that crucial card. A Kalitas, a Tezzeret. We don't have a ton of artifacts, but this guy just ramps you into your 6s or becomes an Abyss if you get to make enough Ethereum cells. Also triggering Fatal Push. Turns out pretty important in the late game. We have a Confirmed Suspicions, a Jace Unraveler, an Obnixilis, and a Torrential Gear Hulk. So this is a control Planeswalker deck. We're looking to take control of the board with all that early stuff and stick a Planeswalker, preferably with a counter backup, and ride it to victory. Kalitas is also in there because you can play him, kill something, make a zombie the same turn, and hopefully ride that advantage, smooth, take over the game against aggro. And he's also immune to Shock and a non-revolting Fatal Push, which, to me, also a Harness Lightning without extra energy around. So that helps him make the cut. And, of course, Gear Hulk is awesome. Now we've got the mana, 8 islands, 8 swamps, 2 hollows, 2 drowns, 2 boneyards, and 3 hubs. This is the deck I would play if I were to play control. So if you are a pure draw goist, try this deck out. It is decision intensive. You will lose some games when your cards just don't line up the way you need them to. We don't really have an answer to certain things like turn 3 tutelage. So this may not be a good ladder deck. Let me say that again. This may not be a good ladder deck. It has poor matchups and perfect draws from opponents that you will not beat. Turn 3 tutelage is hard to catch on the play, is going to be really, really hard to beat. A turn 3 Planeswalker on the play is going to be really hard to beat. Also, sometimes they will just balls to the wall, Planeswalker on 4, and you won't have a counter. You will lose some of those games. This doesn't necessarily make the deck terrible for a meta like a tournament where you expect that you know what your opponents are going to do turns 1 through 4, such as creature, vehicle, creature, vehicle. This deck is ready for that interaction, okay? But it may not be ready for whatever the ladder wants to throw at it. Just so you know. Just so you know. Before you go make those posts, before you go make those comments, I took this out on Steam Ladder and lost 4 games, 2 of them to turn 2 tutelage and 1 to a Gideon, and I could not answer it. Yes, that'll happen. It's not a perfect ladder deck, but I do think it was a good meta deck. It stood up to every iteration of vehicles I could throw at it through Cockatrice. So, if you like Draw Go, give it a shot. You may even want to play it. I think if you hate losing to vehicles, it will do a good job. But that's where kind of I end on the Draw Go Control. Let me show you a couple of brews. These are decks that I didn't play because, well, I just didn't think I got the testing in. Like, they were testing just fine. Everything was nice and everything was good for the most part. But I don't know. I just didn't feel comfortable with them against the overall meta. They were performing, things were okay, but they were just too brewy, and I don't have the guts, I guess, to play something this off the wall. And they have their weaknesses, too, which I don't want to get too much into because they are very brewy, and you may want to go out and have fun with them. And if I know how to beat them and other people don't, that's an advantage for me. But if you want to try something different, this is one of the decks that you can try. So this is Eggs. I made a version that was mono-red. This is a red-black version, which I do believe is better. It's even better at board control than the last version. Let's get into it. 2 ballistas. These are your finishers, and most of the time, if you're not sure what to get with Inventor's Fair, and it's obviously later in the game because you're sacking your Inventor's Fair for 5 mana, then Ballista is usually the best, because once you have this either on the board, in your graveyard, or in your hand, you can set up some cycles where you take over the board with it. So keep that in mind. Then we have 4 Implements of Combustion, 4 Universal Solvents, 4 Renegade Maps to make sure we have plenty of cheap artifacts. Universal Solvent, mostly a mana rock, but not a total joke. You do get into an endgame where you're sacking Solvent, destroying something, and getting it back with a Trawler or Revolution, and that can get really oppressive over time. 3 Fatal Pushes, one of the black additions, along with this card, Battle at the Bridge. So 2 awesome black removal spells that sync right up. This can and does kill Ulamogs. It happens. 1 Key to the City. 3 Servo Schematics. This card wasn't in the original, but there are definitely plenty of games where you need to get your artifacts on the battlefield quickly to take advantage of Improvise and to take advantage of a card coming up, Aether Grid. 4 Alchemist Vial, 2 Scrap Trawler, 2 Pia's Revolution, 2 Aether Grids, 3 Unlicensed. Unlicensed is a key black inclusion as well, letting you pick on planeswalkers and players while destroying anything. Aether Grid. This was a 3 of. It might still need to be a 3 of. It got cut to 2 because most of the games I lost are games where I drew 2 or more Aether Grids, too many lands, not enough artifacts, and the deck just did nothing. So that's why it is as it is. 2 Sabotages. Hold on, need a drink. Dear editor, please edit that out. VA, don't forget to edit that out. People don't like hearing me make noises while I eat and drink. But 2 Sabotages. This was a 3. I think it got to go down to 2 because of Fatal Push and Unlicensed, but it's still a good card. Card. 1 Chandra, Torch of Defiance, mostly used in this deck for the mana ability and going ultimate. Actually, while the curve is incredibly low, you have a lot of mana sinks and a lot that you can do with extra mana later, like Solvents. And then we have the 1 Herald of Anguish, who's just pretty freaking awesome. If the opponent doesn't have an answer, he just takes over the game. 7 Swamps, 7 Mountains, 2 Marshes, 2 Summits, 2 Fairs. Very low land count, only 20 lands. And we've got the maps, remember. We have a lot of cantrips, so keeps it coming. Keeps it coming. But that's red-black eggs. I made a video of just mono-red eggs. Watch that to get a general idea for what the deck is going for and how it just gets obscene in the mid and late game and becomes Lantern Control. And the curve, pretty sick, lots of cheap stuff. Basically, not a lot of mana issues. We only run 20 lands and 4 maps. Sometimes that can be an issue. If you're not sure whether or not to sack your map and you're missing your land drop, the answer is almost always sack your map, hit your land drop. You need to keep hitting land drops, even in this 20 land deck, because you want to get to a late game state where you can actually use your solvents. They come up as kind of the late game saviors, and you want to cast big walking ballistas. So, there you go. If you want to try something completely off the wall, very decision intensive, but honestly, it could be very good. I'm not playing it. I just don't have the guts to play something that kind of unproven in the field, but it might actually be a lot better than it looks. Just heaven forbid they ramp into Gaia's Revenge. Ugh. All right. Next on the list, my last kind of brewy brew. This is Izzet Improv, which I've never stopped working on. It's been a disappointment, but I got it to a place where it wins a lot of games. It's just so immediate draw dependent. Like, your opening hand pretty much tells you, do you win or you lose? And when you win, it's glorious. When you lose, it feels like you did nothing. But this is, I think, is as consistent as it gets. Anyway, 4 bone saws, 4 inventor's goggles. So we'll come back to this. 4 implement of combustion, 1 heart of Kirin, 2 key to the city, because unblockable comes up in this deck, 3 schematic, 4 metallic rebuke, 4 sweatworks brawler. Yeah. Note artificer. 2 reclusive artificer. Note artificer. 3 maverick thopterist. Note artificer. 4 bastion inventor. Note artificer. And 2 free jam regents. That's a dragon. But the flying makes it worth it. So when you play those and you have goggles, it's just so awesome when you play an artificer. And these are artificers that are particularly tougher to deal with. Sweatworks Brawler is tough to block. Reclusive takes out a creature and then gets buffed. Bastion, of course, is hexproof. Combine Bastion with Key to the City and 1 Inventor's Goggles and maybe a Bone Saw, and you have 5 or 6 power attacking unblockable. That'll end the game pretty quickly. And it's pretty... This guy with the right hands, again, it's all about that opening hand. Casting him on turn 3, not too tough. This casting, sometimes you can cast him on turn 2 with the goggles. That's a 4/5 menace on turn 2 that needs a revolting push to answer and can't be answered by shock or harness lightning. That's pretty darn good. And then, of course, in the very near future, you're holding up rebuke for that removal spell. So they have to try to answer it on time. When you curve out, the deck feels like solid gold. And usually by turn 3, you have a good idea whether you're going to win this game or not. A free jam is one of the more vulnerable creatures, but the flying does make it worth it, along with the pump spells. Can end the game in just a few attacks. Anyway, mana base. 9 islands and 9 mountains, 2 falls, 1 handwear battlements, as the haste can be very helpful with the later creatures. 2 wandering fumarole. This is the toughest card for me in the deck, because you need to curve out. You need turn 1, turn 2, turn 3 thing. Like, you just gotta have it. And this card takes away from it, but it gives it some resiliency, and you need the mana fix as well, as you need double red for free jam. You don't need double... You kind of need double blue, because you want to play Bastion or something else and hold up Rebuke. But, God, I hate playing this tapped on turn 1 when I have a 1-drop in hand. So awkward. So I'm not sure if that should be there. Maybe it needs to be cut. Maybe it even needs to be Aether Hub, because you kind of only need the colored mana once on that crucial turn. And if you don't have it later, that's fine. So maybe Aether Hub should make the deck even without other energy theme. But pretty nutty deck. And pretty just straightforward. Can you beat this awesome board I hopefully create on turn 2 and 3? If you can't, that was fun. If you can, wah, wah. But there really aren't a lot of ways to beat the good draws. There's just so many bad draws. Learning what hands to keep is awkward. And eventually, I err on the side of consistency. I'm not running this deck. If you want to run something very different just for Aether Revolt, this might be the deck for you. What a curve. Again, you have to remember, improvise is a huge part of this. Starting at the 4 drops, you kind of just don't like improvise, man. Another card that almost makes this deck is Elder Deep Fiend, which I'd put in for the free jam regents, but it made the clunkier draws even clunkier without giving you hope, whereas free jam regent gives you a bit of hope. Deep Fiend is absolutely just amazingly crushing when you play it off a reclusive, a brawler, or a Thopterist, and you have another creature to go with it. It's just end of days. But if it is not, it is more like a. It is just much weak. It's just much weaker. That's what I'm gonna say. It's not the end of days. It's barely a body slam. All right. So that's Izzet Improv, and if you want to try something crazy and really get your matches done quickly. And this is a kind of a good budget deck too. Not a lot of rares. You see like $18. Play this in standard, but not a lot of rares. So pretty easy deck to get your hands on if you open up packs from Aether Revolt and Kaladesh. And one more. I know I have one more. Okay, so this is the deck. This was the almost got there. This is Mardu. Oh wait, I've got to do two more. Okay, so this is Mardu Vroom Vroom. I did a regular Vroom Vroom. Mardu Vroom Vroom is still kind of a low curve, focusing on unlicensed disintegration. And you'll see just a few differences. I won't go through the whole thing, but we play a few more low curve guys because unlicensed is your 3-drop of choice, which means you can't play as many 3-drops. So we have Kythian in there. Otherwise, a lot of similar stuff. We have Caravan instead of Cruiser because of the mana requirements. Got to have that black mana somehow. And one Thalia, again, curve. We want to be playing unlicensed on 3 and 4, not 3-drops. Or 4-drops. The only 4-drop is Gideon. Mana base, we're going with a Swamp, 2 Marshes, 2 Chapels, 2 Summits, and 2 Hubs. Because we need our hub to create black mana sometimes, we don't want to get hub flooded, because then we can't cast all the things we need to cast if we're using it for other colors. So we only run 2. And we don't run Shambling Vent. Too many tap lands go in that route. This deck is also really good. It wins the mirror a good amount of time just because Unlicensed Disintegration is the better spell. It also doesn't fold to Aether Sphere Harvester nearly as often because of Unlicensed Disintegration. So, good deck. We've already kind of done a lot with vehicles. I did a ton with vehicles in preparation for this because I expected that to be the most played. And after watching the Pro Tour, how could you not? You just get really inspired. So 12 1s, 12 2s, 12 3s. You see it's very just bluntly, here's my stuff, do I win? And of course a Gideon. And it's a very balanced deck. You can see it's spread out well. You can see a lot more of an even color pie here than just about anything else. So there's a thing, and it's fine. It's good. Would I play this instead of red-white? I'm not sure. I'm a consistency nut, so the red-white version might have been my choice, but this version doesn't fold to, thanks to Unlicensed, it doesn't fold to Kalitas or a Harvester nearly as often, and it's good in the mirror. But what's really good in the mirror is that this is the closest thing. This was the last cut I made, was between this and the deck I eventually chose. Mardu Mid-Vroom. This is a mid-range Mardu vehicle variant, and what this is for is when you are in a mirror, the unintuitive hope is that you are a little bit slower. That doesn't make sense a lot with aggro decks, like new players don't get that. They think that with aggro you want to be faster in the mirror. But the truth is you want your last drop, whether if your opponent has a 4-drop, you want to have a 5-drop that's a little bit better. When the last play is your opponent's 5-drop, you want to have a 6-drop that's just a little bit better, or a 5-drop that's a little better than their 5-drop. Because usually it's that last, both decks usually go like threat, 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 bigger threat. And if the opponent doesn't have an answer to that bigger threat, if that bigger threat takes over the game, you win. So this is Mardu Mid-Vroom. It's a mid-range vehicle deck, and you can see it in the curve. We only have the Toolcrafts for the 1-drops. We have Heart, we have Smuggles, we have Scrap Heap, we have 1 Selfless Spirit, we have 3 Motorist, we have 3 Harness Lightning, so we're moving up the chain. You can kind of get the vibe here. Like, we use Shock in the aggro versions. I'm going to use Lightning and Disintegration as my removal spell in the mid-range-ish versions. So 3 Lightnings, 2 Harvesters, 2 Caravans, not Fleet Wheel Cruiser, because we want to basically bulk up on defense, and this has the higher toughness. It's harder for other vehicle decks to remove, and when it gets pumped with a motorist, it can block straight up a fleet wheel. We got 2 Pias, 3 unlicensed, 2 Thalias because they're so good against other vehicles, and 2 Depalas. That's all not news. Now we get into 4-drops. This is where the deck starts getting intense. We have a lot more 4-drops. We take out the 1-drops and we add a whole bunch of like board clogging 4-drops. 1 Gisela, 2 Pia Kirans, 1 Gideon, 2 Ceram's Expertise, which this into Unlicensed Disintegration feels beautiful. This into just about any 3-drop gets you way ahead on board against other vehicle decks. Sometimes when you're playing vehicle on vehicle, it's hard to find time to get your Harvester and your Caravan onto the battlefield without giving up a big attack to your opponent. What you can do instead is play like Thalia on turn 3, and then on turn 4, Ceram's Expertise and get your vehicle out. Puts you way ahead in the mirror. And then 1 Skyship, 1 Avacyn, and 1 Chandra. So this is that big top end to make sure that when your opponent has their 4-drops or their big curve toppers in vehicle versus vehicle or vehicle versus red-green energy, that you have the bigger 5 and 6-drop. So you play the Skyship or the Archangel, hopefully on turn 4 off of a Cultivator's Caravan or a big Chandra on turn 5. Then you just go right over the top of them. And this deck is fairly aggressive enough. It doesn't give up all of its aggro elite skills against control. You can still curve like a Toolcraft into a Copter, or you can curve a Motorist into a Caravan and do a lot of damage. But it's these big 4, 5, and 6 mana plays that can take the game away in the aggro matchups. Anyway, then we get into the mana base. We are okay being a little slower, so we run Shambling Vent. We want to run 5 plains, 5 mountains, 2 marshes, 2 spires, 2 cliff tops, 2 chapels, 2 summits, and 2 hubs. So that is Mardu Mid-Vroom, the deck I almost played. What are its weaknesses? Counter spells. If your deck is a little bit slower and you let the counter deck set up a little bit more, it doesn't matter what your 5 and 6 drops are if they're just going to get their concentration broken or scattered to the winds. So that's the problem with the deck. And I do expect some control players, not a lot, but I do expect some. And I think I found something better. But we'll get into what I found tomorrow. This is where I'm leaving you today with Mardu Mid-Vroom. Maybe you saw a deck that you like, maybe you still need a list for the showdown and aren't decided, and something I said or something I gave you here can put you in a direction, put you on the right track. I look forward to showing you my deck for the tournament, and I'll be working on it a little bit more today. And I hope to see you at either the tournament or the tournament coverage when we start queuing up the matches. Lots more to come on this. I hope you enjoyed this video, but it's already running long. And in case you're curious, yes, those are old school duels jams in the background. Thanks for watching if you watched all of this, and I will see you around. CGB out.